The GPU market at the moment is quite honestly shocking, with many new cards easily selling for way above their MSRP. This has had an effect on older cards too, with quite a few previous generation cards being sold on sites like eBay for way more than they were originally bought for, sometimes even more than the MSRP of new cards. In a market like this, how is the average gamer looking to build their first PC able to cope? What's the solution? Well, I think I may have just found one. In a market flooded with overpriced new graphics cards, anyone not looking to empty their wallet has got to either get really lucky or look into the used market. The other day I was browsing the website of CEX, a tech company in the UK, where I came across something interesting. A GTX 260, a graphics card all the way back from 2008, listed for just £6. When I saw the price, I had to do a double take. This is under $10 in the US, and is way less money than they had older cards listed for. Naturally, after reading all the details, I decided to buy one. The thing about CEX is that what you receive will almost certainly look different from the pictures, especially with all the different brands of graphics cards nowadays. I'm actually okay with this, because it really gets me thinking about which variant of the card I'll get, as there were so many 260s. I should also mention here that the delivery was $195, but this card still only cost me under £8, so I'm not really complaining. A couple of days later, the card arrived, and I decided to unbox it on camera. Upon opening the package, I was pleasantly surprised to find the XFS Black Edition variant of the card. It actually looks quite nice, and the minimalist design does appeal to me. It's a nice beefy card as well, being the same size and weighing as much as both my 780 Ti and 980 Ti. My thought was, even if the card is total garbage, it will still make a nice display piece, but I honestly wasn't sure if it would be bad or not. Looking at a few benchmarks, I got a reasonable idea. According to User Benchmark, this card is 40% slower than the Vega 8 graphics found in Ryzen 3 CPUs, but 48% faster than a GT 730, which I've unfortunately seen used in a lot of pre-built PCs on eBay, so immediately it's not looking too bad, especially for the price. Now, I needed to get the card installed in my main PC. This was filmed before I got my 980 Ti, so the card you see here is actually my 780 Ti. They're both Founders Edition cards, so they look exactly the same anyway. After removing my main card, I took a look at both cards to compare them. You can see that both cards are almost identical in size. The thing that surprised me the most, however, is that the 260 actually has a backplate. That seems like such a modern thing to me, as not even my 980 Ti has one. I then quickly realised that this card only had DVI and S-video connectors. This I was not expecting, but it's understandable given the age of the card. Fortunately, I had a DVI to HDMI cable lying around from my PowerBook G4, so I used this. Connecting the cable was probably the easiest part of this process. Then I turned on the PC, and I was pleased that it actually did turn on. I was however taken back by how loud this card initially was. This did go away after the first boot, and it was never this loud again even while gaming. My next task was to get the drivers for this card working. I went on Nvidia's website and found the appropriate software. Thanks to my PCIe SSD, the installation took no time at all, and before I knew it, the PC was already restarting, but there was a problem. After installing the graphics drivers, there was no signal to my monitor after the BIOS screen.
What is going on with this card? This card is not doing well. What is going on with this card?
To try and figure this out, I connected the card to my old Dell monitor. Apprehensively, I tried it, and celebrated when I saw the desktop, so it appears that this card simply doesn't support the 144Hz refresh rate of my monitor. I did a bit of testing of the animations just to make sure the card was working properly, which it was. And the card was showing up correctly in Device Manager. Firstly, I tried running Minecraft. The processor used is the Ryzen 5 5600X, so I don't think we'll be having a CPU bottleneck here. The world loaded just fine, and I was happy to see a somewhat decent frame rate. Being a CPU intensive game, I wasn't surprised. system was able to achieve an average of 37 FPS, with a high of 60 and a low of 25, but there wasn't any major stuttering here. I thought it was a good idea to try shaders, but I instantly regretted this decision after the game completely froze and then crashed on me. After rebooting, however, I was able to get it to work. With a 4-minute load time, the 260 achieved an average of 1 FPS with Seuss shaders, with a high of 2 FPS and a low of 0. Not exactly playable. After this, I tried running Space Engineers, which, as some of you from my gaming channel may know, is my favourite game. It's also notoriously hard to run. I would personally label it as the new Crysis in some cases. Unfortunately though, the game simply never started, but this didn't stop me. If you have the deluxe edition of the game, you have access to the original first edition of the game all the way back from 2013. This did run, and fairly decently actually. I'd say the 5600X definitely helped here with loading all the asteroids. I was able to have a bit of fun with the 18 FPS average, a max of 34 FPS and a low of 9. This frame drop only happened whenever I looked up at the sky. The Space Engineers problem carried over to other new games such as Forza Horizon 3 and Infinite Warfare. Both need DirectX 11 to run. If you decided to use this card, I imagine you'd bump into this issue quite frequently. Surprisingly though, Phasmophobia launched just fine on this card. Being a Unity-based game, I think this helps. The game is surprisingly playable on the 260. On the Grafton Farmhouse map, the 260 was able to maintain an average of 14 FPS, which, for a card of this age and a game this new, is not so bad, especially considering the price. This frame rate didn't vary too much throughout the gameplay either, hovering between 8 at the lowest and up to 22 at the highest. This was at 720p and at low settings, and I imagine the 260 would struggle with the larger maps, but I think the smaller maps like Tanglewood Street would run quite well here. So what's my verdict? Well, this card is obviously quite old and outdated by today's standards, and can be surpassed in performance by some integrated graphics. I think for the price, it's good. And I know that's quite a bold statement for a 14-year-old card that barely achieved above 30 FPS in the best scenario here, Minecraft. And even that was because of the CPU. I get that the other big issue is the lack of DirectX 11 support, but that really doesn't bother me. A card like this is perfectly capable of running older games from the 2000s, and some light or indie-based modern games, like Five Nights at Freddy's, which, by the way, ran buttery smooth on here. I think the argument here shouldn't be what it can't do, but what it can do, and that is hooking you up with some really good older games, for less than the price of lunch nowadays. And you get to keep the card for life. It doesn't get eaten like a sandwich, it isn't disposable. This can stick with you, and you can resell it on eBay if you change your mind or got bored, and get your money back. If you just want to play some older games, like a few Xbox 360 titles, and you also want to browse the internet and watch videos, take a look at this card. I'll leave a link in the description. I think you'll get your money's worth.